course, one of the biggest issues around the world at the moment. Rolling out doses of vaccines for COVID-19 also means one of the biggest economic issues. Strange things happening on stock markets yesterday. The vaccine maker Moderna, its shares dropped by around 8.2%. There's some suggestions it hasn't been properly valued. They're making something that everyone wants, right? Xolani Mbanjwa, I'm not going to ask you to explain surfing. I don't understand surfing, but you can explain markets to me. Someone's making a vaccine. Everyone wants a vaccine. I want one. And yet their value is dropping. Explain this.
Well, it's a question of the argument over whether Moderna is properly valued as a stock. So that's why there's been a drop in that particular stock. But when you look at all the other stocks, that's Moderna, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Novavax, all those stocks on the 2nd of December, when the world announced the successful vaccine, all those stocks shot up. It was quite interesting. Some of them, just like Johnson & Johnson, is still 70%. The Johnson & Johnson is still 70% the vaccine, the efficacy of it. So their stock has not risen as much. But the day they announce something like 90 plus, definitely their stock price will actually shoot up. As you will see in some of the graphs that we are going to use, a lot of those pharmaceutical companies and their shareholders are going to make a lot of money.
Our president's been talking about vaccine nationalism, the idea that some companies, richer countries, will stock more vaccines than they need. We've all been talking about it. And yet, if you're a rich economy and you do that, you will actually hurt your own economy if you hoard the vaccine, right?
Absolutely. And something that is interesting that came out of the International Chamber of Commerce. They did their research since for the past 6 months. They recently came up with the numbers, and they're basically saying when you are a developed nation and you are hoarding the vaccine, it's going to hurt you. And they are quite interesting figures and numbers, as you will see there. They came up with 3 scenarios. If there is no vaccination in emerging and developing countries, the world economy is going to contract by 7% when it comes to GDP, global GDP. That's $9.2 trillion. That's if no vaccination happens in emerging and developing economies. And when you look at the second scenario of advanced economies reaching their optimal vaccination by July this year, which means those developed economies are actually far ahead. The US is far ahead, over 50 million people vaccinated. If they reach their optimal level by the second half of the year, still the world economy is going to be down $4.5 trillion US, and those sectors, textile, retail, automotive sectors, will be the hardest hit, because you may be the big, guy in the room in terms of as an economy, but you trade with smaller, developing, emerging markets, and if they are not vaccinated, they still manage the vaccine through lockdowns like we are doing. And the third scenario, as you saw there, still it's not looking good. Even if we still continue to vaccinate at a higher pace, the world economy is still going to shrink.
Sure. Okay. I mean, the cost of the vaccines, a huge issue. I mean, and a very emotive issue as well. So there are different vaccines. I presume they have different costs to them. And we seem to be paying more than other countries.
Yes, so the World Bank has come up with a scale which shows that when you actually are dealing with a country like ours, a developing country, you can be charged more. So Zimbabwe, as a low-income economy, will actually pay $3 per dose because these vaccines, when you look at the cost that you're going to see now, they've been estimated between $3 and $37, and the SII vaccines that came yesterday, we are paying around $5.25 per dose, and that's around 78 rands. So the only reason we are paying more is because we fall into a certain category, and that's why we see there when it comes to Moderna, it's estimated at $32 to $37, Novavax $16. The one that people are waiting for is Johnson & Johnson, because it's a single dose rather than the double dose of the vaccine. Now, something interesting when it comes to the cost of the vaccine, there was a talk last year at the height of the lockdown during June and July. People were saying pharmaceutical companies should not be profiteering from a humanitarian crisis. But Pfizer CEO came out strongly to say, you can't put that on us. We've done research and development, so at least we need to make something on it. So the cost of the vaccine is going to go down as more and more companies like Johnson & Johnson come up with their own vaccines, such as the single dose that we are waiting for.
And of course, Johnson & Johnson made with pride in Nelson Mandela Bay, we expect. I mean, there's so many different things. I mean, you and I could talk about this forever, but I mean, the Pfizer CEO, like, he's not wrong. They put their money into it. They didn't cause the pandemic. They put their money into it. They did seem to have help, I think, from some governments. They should make something. The question, of course, is how much. Now, here's where the maths of it gets really interesting. You've got, what, 7, 8 billion people in the world, right? Old-fashioned billions, I mean. That means that if you make $1 per dose, you're making a fortune. You're doing well. The question really is how much profit, isn't it?
That's exactly it. And according to the Pfizer CEO, it's not that much profit. You know, the input costs that have been put in there, the markup is not that high. So leave us alone, leave our shareholders alone. We will make something off of it. If you had let us, you know, it's a free market society out there. So it's a free market economy out there. So if you had let the pharmaceuticals actually go on, those prices would be much, much higher.
But of course, competition, right? I
Yes.
mean, this is where competition is a good thing. One vaccine, one manufacturer, well, they're going to charge what they like. They're going to charge 1,000 rand.
Yes.
You've got what, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 manufacturers now, different vaccines coming on the market. They're going to have to compete hard.
Absolutely hard. And as we've heard from the National Treasury, South Africa are price takers and they are negotiating hard. And if believe you me, when we heard him last week talking about how he has, as the DG of Treasury, Dondo Mokgajane, he's been negotiating certain clauses out of as the contracts. It's something that is quite important, that the National Treasury, the government, is really trying to further protect the fiscus from actually getting into these unsavory contracts and kicking out the middleman. We heard from Dr. Xolani Mbanjwa, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Some people have already approached government to say, we are going to supply the vaccine to you at 4 times the cost. So South Africa, yes, is paying higher than the other nations, but it's because we're a developing nation. And at the end of the day, I think National Treasury is going to do the best they can to make sure that the cost is as low as possible.
There's so many things to talk about, isn't there? And of course, there's so much cynicism, unfortunately,
yes,
around the pharmaceutical companies, around corruption after PPE, after what happened there. So many different things. Xolani Mbanjwa, thanks very much indeed. I do appreciate it.